You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation about Winsham Farm, a residential education centre. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4 on page 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello, Winsham Farm Centre.
Oh, hello. I want to arrange a weekend away for myself and some people from work, and we heard about your centre. I wonder if you could give me some details.
Yes, certainly. We are a residential centre attached to a working farm, and we organise educational activities for those guests who want them. What else would you like to know?
The caller wishes to arrange a weekend away for himself and some colleagues, so option C has been circled. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello, Winsham Farm Centre.
Oh, hello. I want to arrange a weekend away for myself and some people from work, and we heard about your centre. I wonder if you could give me some details.
Yes, certainly. We are a residential centre attached to a working farm, and we organise educational activities for those guests who want them. What else would you like to know?
Well, firstly, what kind of accommodation have you got?
We've got 8 rooms altogether, and we can sleep 38 at any one time. 3 of the rooms have got 6 bunks, and 5 of them have got 4 bunks.
Right, and what other facilities are there?
We have separate toilets and showers for each of the rooms. There's a large dining room and a large meeting room, which can be booked by groups in advance. But I'm afraid we had a flood in there last month, and the floor was slightly damaged, so unfortunately it's out of use just now. We've got workmen coming in next week. When were you thinking of staying?
In 3 weeks' time, the 28th of September.
Oh, it should be okay by then.
Oh, well, that's okay then. And what about food? Do you provide meals or is it self-catering?
We're very flexible. As long as you give us enough notice, we can cater for you. Or, if you prefer, you can just bring your own food and use the kitchen facilities. And some people prefer to eat out, which is also fine.
Fine. And I heard that your farm is organic. Does that mean that you only have crops and no animals?
It doesn't, actually. A lot of people seem to think that, but we do rear livestock as well. And so we have a wide range of food. Organic means it's all produced without the use of artificial fertilisers or pesticides.
I see. That sounds good. Could you tell me what sort of recreational activities are available, either at the centre or in the area?
Yes. Here at the centre, we offer farm tours. They're very popular. One of the farm managers shows people around and explains some of the principles of organic farming. And for any visitors who are really keen, he'll let them drive a tractor or feed the animals and so on. With supervision, of course.
I think a lot of our group would be interested in that. It'd make a change from factory work.
Well, if they fancy it, tell them to come prepared. Plenty of old clothing, especially footwear. It can be very messy and wet.
Okay, I'll warn them.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10 on page 3. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
And another type of activity we do is survival courses, but that's only for groups of 5 or more, and they've got to be acquaintances. They have to cooperate closely. These courses are very popular, especially with school groups, but adults seem to enjoy them too.
What do they involve? Things like map reading?
Well, not exactly. What it is, we've got a large area of woodland on the farm, and we run this course there. It's mainly about collecting food and water, lighting a fire without any equipment, that kind of thing.
This weekend could be hard work. What about the area around the center? What is there to do?
If you look at a map, you'll see that we're very well situated here. Our centre's about midway between the Exmoor National Park, which is very popular for hill walking, and the south coast, which has very good beaches.
Are they both within walking distance?
Well, they're both a bit far, unless you're very fit, but they're only about 30 minutes by road. And there's also a cycle path, which starts quite near here, about 10 minutes walk away. You can hire bikes at the starting point.
What is there to do if the weather's bad? I hope it won't be, but you never know.
Yes, that's right. Well, on most Saturday evenings we show films here, and then once a month a group of local musicians performs in our meeting room. And then Sherborne is only 14 miles away. It's only a small town, but it's got a very good museum and an old abbey, which is well worth a visit.
Well, it sounds perfect for our purposes. One last thing. What about prices? I'm not sure yet, but there'll probably be about 15 of us.
We charge a standard £14 a head for accommodation, whether there are 10 or 20 of you or whatever, and about £7 for cooked meals, depending on the menu you want. Use of the kitchen facilities is extra, as is the hire of the meeting room. It depends really what exactly you want and for how many people.
Right. Well, I've made a note of all that, and I'll discuss it with the rest of the group. Then I'll get back to you with a firm booking. Can I do that by phone?
Yes, you can, but once you've made a booking, we would need a deposit within 5 days to secure it. Then you just pay the balance when you're here.
Oh, yes, of course. Could you give me the address, please?
Yes, it's Winsham Farm, 𝗜𝗘𝗟𝗧𝗦 Road, that's COTEHELE, near Sherborne. And the postcode is SH12 1LQ.
Thank you.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 2. You will hear an introduction to a theme park in Fun City. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16. Welcome to our radio program, Travel With Me. Today, I'll recommend you a fantastic place. It's the theme park in Fun City. It has been awarded the most popular tourist attraction in the city, so just follow me to find something interesting there. The park opens at 9:30 every morning. For the first activity, I definitely advise you shouldn't miss the riding in the park. The actual riding begins at 10 a.m, but I suggest you arrive a little earlier before the opening time. Otherwise, there might be a long wait. And how much, you may ask, does an entrance ticket cost? Well, there are two types of tickets, basic ticket and family fastline track ticket. You can either buy a ticket at the ticket office near the main entrance to the park or reserve from the official website in advance. The latter is preferable as it always offers a discount. For example, the original price for a basic ticket is £89, but if you buy it online, it only costs £78. For the family fastline track ticket, you only have to pay £95 on the internet instead of its original price, £113. Visiting the lake in the park is also a good choice. There is a new refreshment room beside the lake, and the latest thing, it was only finished last month, is the splash ride. It is a new area and pretty exciting. Forget about wearing waterproofs because you'll still get wet. And don't take cameras either. As a result, I strongly advise that the best time to visit the lake is in the hottest season, in case you catch a cold. Another activity you'll find exciting is riding the roller coaster bike. I suggest families with children go for a try as it's always favoured by them. This roller coaster bike is different from the normal one in that it's made of wood, so it's lighter. The person who designed it has won a special prize for innovation. For those who are not interested in these exciting activities, there is a resort for you. You can sit there talking, relaxing, or taking photos. Please remember, this section is for a picnic, so you have to prepare your own snacks. But don't worry about drinks, since free bottled water is available there. Oh, one more thing is, it's better to take a picnic blanket to sit on. After the picnic, if there is some time left, you can take part in some other interesting activities you like, such as watching the circus or going fishing. At the end of the one-day trip, there is a special event for you, the firework display. You'll enjoy a spectacular show in the sky. Everyone is cheering. I think it's a must for you, with a perfect ending of the day. Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20. OK, that was something about the most basic information. And now here's some more practical information about 4 popular activities on the brochure of the theme park, because some people want to know whether they're worth trying. Well, let's first look at the cowboy show. It's a dance show by a group of boys wearing cowboy boots and hats. What they perform tells the stories of cowboys' life. Rest assured that you don't need to queue for hours to get in, so please come and enjoy it. Then there is the driving school ride. In this activity, you can try a variety of vehicles, but please note that this one is only for those below 1.2 meters. The staff will measure your height at the entrance. Parents can just have a rest on the chair and watch their kids playing. You don't have to be worried about safety, as everyone is guided by a coach throughout the process. As to roller coaster jumping, it is the scariest activity, as you will experience the vertical dropping, so it might be a good choice for those who like extreme sports. Of course, children are not allowed to join in. The last one is the magic show. I'm sure you'll be attracted by the charm of the magician. You can hear the audience burst into applause throughout the show. Please promise me, don't leave early, because just as horror stories won't tell you until the end, there is something unexpected waiting for you. I'm sure you won't regret it. Okay, that's all I want to recommend to you today. If you want to know about more fascinating tourist attractions, please wait for our programme next week. Bye! That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2.
Section 3. You will hear a student called Joel talking to his tutor about his research into farmers' attitudes towards new developments in agriculture. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26 on page 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Dr. Owen?
Come in, Joel. Right, so how's your research going? You're looking at how farmers feel about new technology in agriculture, aren't you?
Well, actually, it's more general than that. I'm looking at their attitudes to a variety of new developments in agriculture.
OK. Have you got a title for the project yet?
I was thinking of something simple, like farmers' attitudes towards the adoption of new farming practices.
That's possibly a bit too general. I think the title needs to be a bit more specific. What kind of farming will you be looking at?
Well, that'll vary, actually. But I want to speak to each of the 10 farmers in my sample. So I've chosen farms which are all in the same region.
OK. Well, I'd specify where they are then.
Right. I'll amend the title to do that.
OK. Is there any particular reason why you've decided to do face-to-face interviews? It'll be quite time-consuming, won't it?
Yes, and I did consider doing telephone interviews for that reason. Especially as it's unnecessary for me to actually see the places where they work. It's just that, in my experience, a lot of farmers don't like talking on the phone. So they'll be more likely to talk freely if I see them in person.
Yes, you're probably right. Good.
Then the first thing I want to investigate is how the farmers actually find out about new developments in agriculture that they might want to adopt. What sources they use.
Right. So how are you going to do this?
Well, I could make a checklist of sources of information for them to look at in advance, so they could tick off the ones they actually use. Things like farming magazines, farm product advertisements, television and the internet and so on.
It might be more useful to ask them rather than show them a list. A spontaneous response to one or two open questions might give you a more accurate picture.
All right, I'll do that then.
Now, talk me through some of the other issues you want to cover.
Well, there's the way the government communicates with farmers.
Right, well, one thing is farmers complain that the government sends out the same information to all of them, whether they're poultry farmers or dairy farmers or arable farmers.
So they get all this information, but half of it doesn't actually apply to them.
Exactly. So you could look at that.
Right. Then I wanted to look at attitudes of British farmers to the cost of making any changes on their farms. According to articles I've read, farmers in Britain aren't, in principle, against investing money in new machinery and new practices, but they're actually just too busy to work out what the financial implications are.
Yes, and a lot of them don't seem to consider getting financial advice from their accountants about it either.
Right.
There's also been some research in Australia on sheep rearing practices. I can give you the reference if you like. Basically, it appears that the majority of Australian sheep farmers are willing to risk adopting new practices on the basis of just a few pieces of research. They don't usually wait until the evidence in favour of the changes is overwhelming. They're quite happy to act before then so they can get ahead of the game.
OK, I'll take a look at that. Thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30 on page 6. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
We said we'd also look at some of the reading material I've been reviewing.
Yes, I had another look at Contemporary Farming Manual, which is clearly bang up to date. It covers a lot of things a farmer might want to know, but it's so dull.
Absolutely. I found it really hard going. And I can't imagine any farmer wading through it. There aren't even any decent pictures.
Did you have time to look at Running a Small Farm?
Yes, although I only read bits of it because, despite being entertaining, it wasn't very academic.
I know. And a lot of the information is either misleading or simply wrong. I'm surprised it got published at all. I don't imagine the farming press will rate it very highly.
You recommend agriculture and economics. I expected that it would be really difficult. The title's a bit off-putting. But I thought it was brilliant. So I've bought it.
Yes. Some people think it relies too heavily on farming practices in specific parts of the world. But the theories that underpin these are universal. And that's why it's a required textbook for anyone studying agriculture.
Right.
What else did you come across?
I borrowed How to Survive in Farming from the library. I thought it'd be interesting background, and I liked the informal style. But it turned out to have been written years ago.
Yes, and like everything else, farming fashions have changed, so it's badly in need of a new edition.
Can I ask you a question about...
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 4.
Section 4. You will hear part of an environmental studies lecture about the possibility of using insects as a source of food. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40 on page 8. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the challenges of producing food for the global population. And there's been a lot of interest recently in new sources of food, and one of the most interesting is insects. Well, why should insects be considered as a food source? Well, for a start, a number of them are full of protein, and many also have certain vitamins, which may surprise you, more so than a typical farm animal, in fact. And compared to farm animals, whose waste products contain a great deal of ammonia, the waste products of insects are far less acidic and would therefore do very little damage to the soil or to any of the rivers that run through farmland. Furthermore, when it comes to the production of insects, the expense would be very low. No trees need be chopped down or forests turned to pasture, so the space that they would occupy would be radically smaller than for, say, cows or sheep. But even if some consumers decided that they'd rather not put insects in their shopping basket, we could also consider how insects might be added to animal feed, the food given to farm animals. It's already known that some insects, if they were part of the animal feed, would act as a sort of natural antibiotic within a cow or sheep's digestive system, thus removing the need for human intervention. This would be a cost-effective and environmentally friendly alternative for farmers. However, if consumers do decide that insects are a potential superfood, a way of feeding the world, then the next question is, where do we source them from? The wild, perhaps? Or should they be bred on insect farms? Well, if we take from the wild, one potential consequence of this is that too many will be taken, and in turn a species could become endangered or extinct. Then, for insects which are harvested from the wild, we have no way of knowing where they have been or what they have come in contact with, and this could have harmful consequences for human health. Imagine the scenario if food producers or retailers were supplied with insects that were carrying bacteria. This is not something we want to add to the food chain. If insects are bred on farms, the problems I've just outlined could be avoided. And in many countries, it's already the case that demand for insects is growing, really growing. And it's not in rural areas where you'd expect, but, in fact, in the cities. In Thailand, for example, where the demand has really shot up. However, people in countries where insects are traditionally what people eat, they'll tell you that when insects are intensively farmed, their taste is simply not the same. Ironically, this is the same accusation that people have when it comes to the way that cows and sheep are raised. Insect farmers also face a series of challenges, and researchers are keen to assist. First of all, when it comes to breeding, different insects have different requirements. For a start, it's essential to maintain a suitable temperature for many species to reproduce. If this isn't right, nothing's going to happen. Another problem is something that often happens when any species is bred in a confined space. And so far, researchers and farmers have not come up with any clear or long-term effective solution to it. We're talking about the problem of disease. You don't want a whole colony wiped out in one go. There's also the question of where insects need to be kept. If insects are to be bred as a superfood, then the tanks used to house them have to be better designed, and this has to happen so that cleaning takes up less time. If we're talking about mass production, we don't want this to be a time-consuming activity. And finally, like I said before, insects have long been part of the diet in some countries, but not so in others. If farmers want to encourage people in, say, England or France or Germany to eat insects, then they're going to have to develop a strategy, and I'm not talking about production, but marketing. Something that'll persuade potential customers to try something different. Well, I've given you a general overview of the situation. Now let's look at some specific examples.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.